Police questioning or interrogations can actually fall into several different categories depending on when it's happening and the situations surrounding it happening. So this week's video, we're going to talk about what those different categories are, when they're allowed, when they're not allowed, and what you should know about your rights with each one. So stick around. Happy Friday, everybody. Hope you're having a great week and gearing up for another awesome weekend. So like I said in the intro, this week we're going to talk about police interrogation or police questioning. And whenever a lawyer or a prosecutor or even a judge is examining whether or not that questioning was violative of somebody's constitutional rights, the first thing that they have to determine is what type of questioning it is. What type of encounter are we analyzing? Because there's different rules depending on which one you're talking about. So the first category, the most common category of police questioning, is what's generally known as a Terry stop. Now the word Terry actually refers to a name. It's the name of a criminal defendant in a case where this opinion came from many years ago. So a Terry stop is typically the first initial interaction that a police officer has with an individual. And in order for a Terry stop to be valid, at least here in Texas and in most jurisdictions around the country, but we'll stay specific to Texas for today's conversation, in order for a Terry stop to be valid, that officer has to have what's known as a reasonable suspicion that a crime has just occurred or is about to occur, will soon occur. So a reasonable suspicion is defined as a set of articulable facts that a officer can say or can rely upon to have a belief that a crime is about to occur or has just occurred. Okay, they can't just walk up to random people on the street and start demanding that they answer questions. That would not be valid under the rules of Terry. They have to have that reasonable suspicion. Now, reasonable suspicion is a very low bar. It's one of the lowest bars as it relates to burden of proof for anything in the criminal justice world. It's an incredibly low bar. In fact, in some jurisdictions, you'll see the fact that a person was exiting a building that is a high crime area at a late hour of the night. That's enough for a reasonable suspicion. A little bit ridiculous if you ask me, but that's just kind of to illustrate the point that it's a very low bar. So in a Terry stop, they're allowed to ask basic questions. It has to be short and succinct, such as, who are you? What are you doing here? Where are you going? Where are you coming from? In order to alleviate their suspicion of criminal activity. The Terry stop, again, has to be short. It has to be concise. It can't be for an extended period of time. And in that short time period, the officer either has to convince themselves, all right, nothing is criminal here, and allow the people to go on their way, or they have to gather enough information that rises to the level of probable cause in order for them to continue the interrogation. So that's what we're going to get to next. But that's what a Terry stop is. Real quick before we move on to the next section of the video, I did want to take a minute to remind all of you that in 2024, I'm really trying to grow all of my social media channels. So if you like this video, if you think it was informative at all, I would really ask you to do a couple of things. Please drop a like, hit the thumbs up button that you see below. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and get notifications turned on, that little bell icon, so that you can be notified anytime I post a new video like this with new information. And third, I have a Twitch stream that I do every Sunday night at 7:45 p.m. Texas time, where I talk about not only these topics, but other topics that people have, other questions that people have regarding the law or law school or life as a lawyer or whatever. And I'd love for you to join me over there, bring your questions. I also always have a weekly topic where we celebrate the wins of anybody that comes by the channel. So if you did something that you want people to acknowledge, or congratulate you on, that's what that channel's for. It's all about positive vibes and uplifting each other. So I really hope that you will take the time to join me on Sunday evenings for that, because it's a whole lot of fun. And I look forward to seeing you there. So thanks again, and here's the rest of the video. The next type of encounter that kind of crosses the line between Terry stop and when somebody is detained is what I call a consensual encounter or a voluntary interrogation. This is when you see in TV shows or movies where a detective or an officer says, why don't you come on down to the station and answer some questions and we'll clear this whole thing up, right? What makes it consensual, what makes it voluntary is under the law, the person being questioned has absolutely no legal obligation to participate in that questioning. They don't have to answer any questions. They don't have to give any statements. If the Terry stop is concluded and the person has not been detained, then that individual is free to go, is free to leave, is free to ignore any and all questions that are being asked to them by the officer. And this is the type of questioning that, as a lawyer, I always say, never voluntarily answer any of those questions unless you've at least consulted with the lawyer. In an ideal world, you have that lawyer next to you when you're answering those questions to make sure that your rights are being protected. But at the bare minimum, you should have talked to a lawyer ahead of time. So if an officer has exhausted the identify yourself type questions and is starting to ask questions about an offense or a crime or something that occurred, at that point, I typically tell people that's when you shut it down. That's when you unequivocally say, I appreciate what you're doing, but I'm not going to answer any questions without a lawyer present or without at least consulting with one beforehand. Thank you very much. And then you don't say anything else. Because if you continue to talk, you're not detained yet. Everything you're saying is of voluntary nature, and they can use all of that against you. And they can twist all of that to mean something that you didn't really mean for it to sound like. And so that's the time where you shut it down and you don't answer any more questions. But that's a voluntary encounter, a consensual encounter. And judges will typically say that anything that was said during a consensual encounter is admissible and can be used against you in the crime or in the case. The next type of questioning is what's known as a custodial interrogation. So this is the type of questioning when the person is in custody or they have been detained. So whether it's they've been placed in handcuffs and put in the back of a squad car, or they've been taken down to the jail, they've been booked and processed and taken to an interrogation room. This is the type of questioning that you typically see on your Law and Order, your SVU, whatever, where they've got the bright light above them and the two detectives are just grilling them for information. Now, I gave some advice in the last section during the consensual encounter that you should never answer those questions without a lawyer. That goes doubly true if you're in custody. Okay, because if you're in custody, that means the officers have already made a determination that they think you're guilty of a particular crime. No matter what, you're never going to talk your way out of it at that point. You're never going to convince that these officers have got it wrong. You're never going to convince the detective to change their mind and to unarrest you. It's simply not going to happen. I have seen many people talk their way into additional charges or talk their way into an indictment when they've been giving these statements trying to clear everything up. I've yet to see a single person that has done the opposite, talked their way out of it. They've been arrested, they've given their story, and the officer has said, oh, never mind, this was a big misunderstanding, and let them go. Now, I have worked cases where as the lawyer, I've been able to provide evidence to the detective that makes them change their mind, that makes them reverse their decision, and they end up not prosecuting that individual. But I've never seen it happen where an individual by themselves, by answering questions, has been able to do that. It's very, very rare, and there are so many risks associated with that you're much better off. Just get a lawyer and let them figure it out. So those are the three different types of interrogations that can happen. Those are the three different types of questioning. Keep in mind that these things are fluid. You know, if an officer stops somebody on a Terry stop, and in the answers to those Terry questions, they get enough information to give them probable cause, that Terry stop can then become a consensual encounter. So they ask him a little bit more, and then in those answers, that officer now believes I definitely have probable cause to make an arrest. They arrest the individual, put him in the back of squad car, and now it's a custodial interrogation. So these interrogation subtypes are very fluid. They flow from one to another. And whether or not they were done by the book, or they were done validly, or that they were done in a way that violated your constitutional rights, is a very fact-specific question. And so it's something that your lawyer has to really dig into and decide when they look at the facts specific to your case. So spend some time going over all of that with your lawyer. Really ask questions because, again, no two cases are the same. No two fact patterns are the same. And so I can't give a blanket answer where if they do this, then your rights were violated. I don't know. It's really a fact-specific question. So I hope this was informative. I hope this was helpful. As I said earlier, if it was and you have additional questions or want to talk about this more, please come by my Twitch stream on Sunday nights at 7:45 and let's chat about it. Pose some hypotheticals. Let's bounce some ideas off of one another. Would this be okay? Would that be okay? And we can talk about it. We can get into a lot more detail because just like any of my other topics, I could spend hours talking about this and still not hit all of the nuances of the individual rules. So I hope to see you guys on Sunday. And if not, then I hope to see you guys again on my next video next Friday. Until then, I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you have a great week next week. Be good and stay on the right side of the bars.